morning, all. DP, should we wait for some time?
Hello, hello. So we'll wait for 5 minutes and then you can start.
Okay, DP. Thanks. DP, should we start?
Yes, sir, you can start.
Thanks. So good morning all, and I know the situation is still as that we are meeting again on the Zoom platform. So last time we met, we had discussed US FDA. Today it will be another equally robust regulatory authority, or I would say sometimes they are in fact more robust, which is European Medicines Agency, EMA. We'll try and target to complete this session by 11 a.m. And as always, I'll need your help for this session. Just like last time we had a dialogue. I don't want to keep this as a monologue. So this is the introduction of the European Medicine Agency. On the right side, you will see this is an infographic from the website. This is what they do. Can someone read this for me?
Can I?
Yeah, please. Who is this?
Dhanashree.
Yeah, Dhanushri. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
European Medicine Agency, introduction, function, structure of EMA regulations. What we do, protect human and animal health, facilitate development and access to medicines, evaluate applications for marketing authorizations, monitor the safety of medicines across their life cycle, provide reliable information on human and veterinary medicines in lay language.
Thank you so much, Dhanushri. I think this is very important. These four are the pivotal functions of European Medicine Agency. And as you can say, it is not only the human health, but also the animal health they look after. They facilitate development and access to medicines and evaluate the proposals. But very important, which is the last function, is that they provide very reliable information on medicines in lay language. So unlike FDA website, you will see on a EMR website a lot of very simple infographics which at times they translate into multiple European languages to make the general public understand the functions of regulatory authority. I would say no other regulatory authority comes even close to them in this particular aspect, because we all know how challenging it is to understand and comprehend regulatory framework, but they in fact try to make it as appealing to layman as possible. This is the latest I've taken today morning from their website, a snapshot. And just like last time when you saw the US FDA presentation, here also you'll see COVID, of course, is a highlight. And they are in fact trying to reassure general public that how they are fast tracking the development, support and approval for medicine and vaccines in Europe. Just for your understanding, I'm sure most of you are already aware that UK is no more part of EMA or EU after Brexit, and now earlier the European Medicine Agency office was in London, which has last year now shifted to Amsterdam, and it operates now from Amsterdam. Still 27 European countries are part of European Union and accordingly European Medicine Agency. So we'll see more about them as we go further. Now this is European Union, which I was referring to, 27 countries which are part of European Union, and then there are some which are European Free Trade Association countries like Iceland, Norway and Liechtenstein. But these are those 27 countries, and you can see there are countries as important as Germany, France, Spain, and then there are countries which are a little bit smaller but have still their place in Europe, like Slovakia and Malta. So you can see multiple countries, but just like India, which is a union of different states, European Union has tried this particular composition for their economic stability primarily, and with that comes the guidelines and all, not only for pharma but even for other commercial activities. They have European guidelines, and today we are going to understand more about the medicine guidelines and the framework which they follow. So as I said, decentralized agency from Amsterdam, it started its functioning in 1995. Earlier office was in Britain, and now they are completely based out of Netherlands. So can someone read the mission statement of EMA for me?
The mission of the European Medicines Agency is to foster scientific excellence in the evaluation and supervision of medicines for the benefit of public and animal health.
Thank you. Who was that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. So yeah, so you can see they're very clear. They have used words like excellence. They have used words like benefit, which clearly talks about that they are not just mere watchdogs for the regulatory purpose. They in fact go beyond, and their primary mission is to foster scientific excellence. In fact, many of the guidelines which come out of EMA are, I would say, better than even FDA guidelines, because they many times are so granular that they don't leave much for imagination. They keep everything documented so very well. But at the same time, as I said, they are more people facing, and that is where they emphasize on benefit of public and animal health. Now, this is the structure of the EMA management board. Can someone read the composition for me?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. EMA Management Board. The Management Board is made up of the following members: one representative of each of the EU member states, two representatives of the European Commission, two representatives of the European Parliament, two representatives of patients organization, one representative of doctors organization, one representative of veteran organization. In addition to the members, the management board also has one observer, each from Iceland, and Norway.
Thank you. Who's that?
Radhika.
Sorry, I didn't get the name.
Radhika.
Thanks, Radhika. So as Radhika gave us the composition, you can see it is actually different, I would say, sections of Europe coming together, and each country has a representation to it with the one representative, but they also have representations from patient organization, doctors organization, and veterinarian organization. So you can see it is not only the regulators who will be calling the shots. They also have representation from patients organization, specifically when we are looking for the medicines for some rare diseases. That is where they play a big role, and they bring in patients perspective. Doctors organization, veterinarian organization bring in highly scientific perspective from a clinical standpoint. So you can see that diverse composition. And the last one is, as I told you, these are not part of EU per se, but they are part of European Free Trade Association. So they are associate members, these three countries, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. So they also have representation from them. So very diverse board, and that is where their guidelines are much more prolific for handling issues, not only from the regulatory perspective, but also from the general public perspective. Now, this is a mid-year report. I just wanted to give you a sense of what exactly is their workload. Uh, First, I would request you to look at the last bullet. In the last year, they recommended 84 medicines for marketing authorization. Please understand the language, recommended. They have not approved. Given the European Medicine Agency
Your
doesn't
voice
give
is
approval.
breaking.
They just recommend. Sorry, is it audible now?
Yes.
So the 2018 they had these 84 medicines which they recommended for marketing authorization, and out of them 42 had a new active substance. Last year, because their report is published only for mid-year, they had around 63 applications received, and you can see they have divided it into different categories like new non-orphan medicinal product, which they have gotten almost double than 2018, and generic products also, which they have got significantly more than 2018. So their span of work is huge, and that is where they are trying to uh, get into multiple different categories, wherein even diseases which are rare diseases for orphan drugs, they have got a new committee for that, and we'll come to that. But just wanted to give you a sense of what kind of scope of work they have, and I'm just referring to the medicinal product primarily from the human perspective. Now you can see they have people from all over the world which are part of and they all are responsible for taking care of almost more than 500,000 medicines safe in the EU market. So that's what they look at. Can somebody read the functions of EMA for me?
Functions of EMA: facilitate development and access to medicines, evaluate applications for marketing authorization, monitor the safety of medicine across their life cycle, provide information to healthcare professionals and patients.
Thank you. Who was that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. So these are the functions of EMEA. And then, as you can see, they facilitate development and access to medicines. They evaluate applications for marketing authorization. Very important is the safety of medicines. And that is how they look into all these things. So it is very important from that angle. But I think more important, I mean, of course, it is that equally important, but also for you to understand what they don't do. Can someone read this for me? I know it is little more, but help for this.
What EMA doesn't do, evaluate the initial marketing authorization application of all medicines in the European Union, evaluate applications for the authorization of clinical trials, evaluate medical devices, evaluate food supplements and cosmetics, carry out research or develop medicines, take decisions or have information on the price on or availability of medicines, control the advertising of medicines, control or have information on pharmaceutical patents, develop treatment guidelines, provide medical advice, develop laws concerning medicines, issue marketing authorizations.
Thank you so much. Who was that?
Dhanashri.
Thanks, Dhanashri. So please understand, all of you, the big difference between I would say FDA and EMA, you can see is the fourth bullet. They do not evaluate food supplements. And even from the Indian perspective, they do not evaluate cosmetics. Uh, because in India, we have a Drugs and Cosmetic Act, which is a separate act. But European Medicine Agency is very specific for medicines. Yes, in the medicines, they take care of both human as well as veterinarian, but they do not evaluate marketing authorization application. They do recommend that, but European Commission is the ultimate authority who takes the decision for that. They do not evaluate medical devices. Also, they do not give any treatment guidelines or provide any medical advice. So this is something which is very, very important. And at times this keeps changing depending on the management board's decision, and some functions may come into the foray of EMA and some may go out. But right now, this is what is there into their scope of work. The previous one which we saw, the what they do primarily, and of course, even if these are 4 bullets, multiple which they do, and over here where they actually talk about what they don't do. Now we come to the Human Medicine Organization chart, and you can see Alexis Nolte is heading that division. And you can see there are different departments over there, and scientific evidence, quality and safety, medicines, committees, and quality assurance department. So this again, last time as we saw for FDA, this again has a very similar kind of a structure, but I am referring largely to the human medicine department because that's what we will be focusing on, not the entire EMA structure, because our focus will be on the clinical research segment. Committees, they have 7 committees. Can someone read the names of the committee for me?
Yes, committees. Committee for Medical Products for Human Use, CHMP. Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, PRAC. Committee for Medical Products of Veterinary Use, CVMP. Committee for Orphan Medical Products, COMP. Committee on Herbal Medicinal Products, HMPC. Pediatric Committee, PDCO. Committee for Advanced Therapies, CAT.
Thank you. Was it Radhika?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Radhika. So, as you can see, 7 different committees they have. The names are self-explanatory. The CHMP is the one who is the most active, but other committees also play a big role. Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee is important from the drug safety perspective. And then they have smaller committees for orphan products and pediatric committees, because pediatric is something which we all know. This population is a vulnerable population and also a special population. So they do have a dedicated group which works as pediatric committee and give their set of recommendations to the European Medicine Agency. The CHMP again would need someone's help. Maybe you don't have to read the whole statement. You can just read the font in black for me. Can someone read this?
One member appointed by each of the EU member states.
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
Yeah. Hello.
Yep.
One member appointed by each of the EU member states.
Mm-hmm.
One member appointed by each of the EFTA states.
Mm-hmm.
5 co-opted members.
Yeah. Thank you. Who is that?
Vidhi.
Thanks, Vidhi. So as Vidhi had said, again you can see 27 member states and 5 co-opted members. So you'll see this is much more diverse than what we saw for USFDA. Of course, US being one country and EU being a group of countries, you'll see this is much more democratic in composition, let it be EMA composition or let it be even their committees, every committee will have a representation from each of the country. So this is important. This clearly shows the spirit of the federal cooperation. And now you'll see over here how their span of activity varied. So they have special scientific advisory groups for different therapeutic areas, let it be cardiovascular, let it be psychiatry, neurology, diabetes, HIV, anti-infectives, and for cancer, oncology. And then they have quality working groups, special working groups. They work under the banner. That is why you will see different therapeutic areas, even vaccines, and areas like immunology, they are all coming into the foray. And this, as I said, from our perspective, is the most important committee of EMA. And that is why you will see how granular it becomes when you go from EMA to CHMP, and then from CHMP to different working parties or advisory groups. It becomes more and more granular, and that is why their huge staff of 4,000 it is justified. Now, this I won't read each of these, but this I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the different groups which work with them. And again, you will see they have the groups working for pre-authorization or post-opinion, inspections, product defects, pediatric medicine, herbal products. So again, smaller groups into them, which which work together cohesively with different committees, and then also they come out with some pharmaceutical products depending on the requirement they may consider. Now moving into the next piece, which is submission of the application. Just wanted to show you that it's not only today, but they have been following up this for quite some time. They have e-submission. You can in fact submit whole of your document through their portal. Of course, will be granted user ID and password, but you will be able to submit it sitting at your place, no matter where you are. And that is how user friendly they have kept it. Moving to the next committee, which is the Pediatric Regulation Committee. Can someone read this for me?
Pediatric Regulation and Expert Committee, the Pediatric Committee, PDCO, and agreed evolving pediatric development, the Pediatric Investigation Plan, PIP, a set of rewards and incentives for new and on-patent products, for off-patent products, a series of other tools for information, transparency, and stimulation of research.
Thanks. Was it Dhanashri?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dhanashri. So, as Dhanashri mentioned, the PDCO is again a special group which works together. All of you need to be aware that the pediatric investigation plan is mandatory for products which are developed maybe primarily for adult indication, but they have age group also. So companies right at the start of their development have to actually give a PIP to the pediatric committee, which reviews it and approves it. Because as I told you, this being a special population, it is not the first population which gets enrolled into the clinical trials, because ethically that is also not allowed. But the medicines which in further usage will be used for pediatric population, the EMA wants the PIP, comprehensive PIP from the sponsors, and PDCO is the one who reviews that plan and agrees for it. In fact, they also stimulate research because as we all know, Now, since world is moving to more rare disease management, some of which are genetic diseases, the PDCO plays a big role in encouraging research for such diseases which may be rare but can be very debilitating or can be life threatening. So that is where they play a big role. Again, you'll see the different national authorities coming together, and they also have CHMP members into them, but they also have patient and caregivers and healthcare professionals in them. So it's very important that they are very keen to have participation from patients and medical fraternity, because they just don't want to give a one-sided guideline or one-sided plan. They want it to be collaborative plan wherein they hear the voices from patients and their doctors. It becomes all the more important that how do they manage these things. Then moving to the orphan drug designation procedure. Anyone what an order?
Orphan drug designation procedure. Sponsor notifies the agency of intent to file, pre-submission meeting or teleconference, submission of applications, a validation by the agency day one, assessment or COMP meeting, a possible hearing or COMP opinion adopted by day 60 or 90, opinion sent to the European Commission decision granted within 30 days, publication in EU register on the Commission's website, publications of public summary of opinion on the agency's website.
Thank you. Who was that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. So yeah, so orphan drugs, as we all know, are these drugs which are for rare diseases, and because they are for rare diseases, the pharmaceutical companies may not really have huge financial incentive out of that, as unlike drugs for say diabetes or hypertension. But considering the challenges on the commercial front, these regulatory agencies, let it be US FDA or European agency, they encourage pharmaceutical companies by giving them the benefits in terms of commercial advantages. They may extend the patent. They in fact also give them, I would say, in terms of the research grant, also some support. So that is how they try and engage pharmaceutical companies in the research for such rare diseases, for which otherwise the companies may not be very interested, but they take care of that by giving them incentives for such drug development. I just wanted to show you the European Public Assessment Report, EPAR. This is something which, as I told you, is available very openly and anyone can access this. They actually want to show people that how do they assess a particular medicine and what kind of information they are ready to provide to general public. So EPARs are very important documents. Any drug which is approved in the European Union will have its public assessment report, and you can actually read those reports where they give scientific information in a as possible as simple language, but they do talk about different type of studies which have been conducted and how did the CHMP committee reviewed that particular product. So
So your voice is breaking.
they keep at even at the product level. Sorry, is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So this is where the EPAR come into action. Then we go to the pharmacovigilance committee. They give the guidelines for good pharmacovigilance practices. In fact, their July 2012 guideline are considered as one of the best ever guidelines for pharmacovigilance, very comprehensive. And in fact, that really helped India in terms of getting many outsourced projects for pharmacovigilance. Some of you may be aware that right now India is the leading country in providing outsourced pharmacovigilance services to major pharmaceutical companies based out of US and Europe. And I think these guidelines have helped tremendously to increase that, because it's not only the drugs efficacy which the agencies are very keen on, they in fact want the safety of the drug to be monitored continuously, and have given a fantastic framework which is to be followed by sponsor companies at every level post marketing. And this is where it has helped this new industry to evolve. Can someone read these important modules for me?
Good
Yes, sir.
pharmacovigilance practices GVP. Module 1 pharmacovigilance systems and their quality systems. Module 2 pharmacovigilance systems master files. Module 5 risk management systems. Module 6 management and reporting of adverse reactions to medicinal products. Module 7 periodic safety update reports. Module 8 post authorization safety studies, and Module 9 signal management.
Thank you. Who was that?
Vineet.
Thanks, Vinit. So very important modules, and as you can see, the way I told you, they become more and more granular. So it can be past like post authorization safety studies, PSURs, signal managements. They have given different guidelines which have really helped other regulatory authorities also to base their GVP on these guidelines. Moving on to the inspections piece, which we saw even for FDA, because I wanted you guys to be aware of the GCP inspection EMA perspective. Just inspection from started in 1997, and you can see the graph, the way it has gone up. The sky blue is for non-routine, and the navy blue is for routine inspections. Of course, routine are much more, but they clearly give the scale at how many inspections do they do in a year. And the next slide, you will see across the world, including, of course, our own India. They do it across the world, Europe, US, of course, by default, but even countries like India and Commonwealth independent states, Canada, everywhere they do these inspections. More than 70 countries they have till now covered. Routine is because, of course, it's a routine surveillance part, but sometimes they can do non-routine, which can be called as for cause inspection. Inspection coming out of certain particular issue which they came across the dossier, or sometimes even some whistleblower telling them something about a particular trial. So this is where they can do a non-routine inspection as well. I just want to show you next slide will be in fact the framework of the GCP inspection report. And why I wanted to show you this is because then you will have a complete understanding of what kind of documentation do they do when they do the inspection, and of course what kind of documentation is needed when you are going to undergo a GCP inspection by EMA working group. Of course, I don't want you to read the whole things, but just wanted to give you in the first slide an understanding of the rightmost column in terms of the findings. you can see critical and major. So whenever an inspection happens, there are different kind of findings which are given. The findings which are minor are kind of adjustable findings. They are okay with that. If you give some justification then and there, they'll document it, but not to worry about. However, major becomes something which they want more than your verbal commitment. They would need some more processes into be placed, and critical will be the most serious one. So if there is a critical observation from the inspection, it means that something was terribly wrong. It may be wrong from the process perspective. It may be wrong from the person perspective. Unfortunately, it may be wrong from ethics perspective. So there can be different angles to it, and that is why it becomes very important that how do we take care of these inspections, specifically from the EMA GCP work group when they come for inspection. So you can see in the first slide, they even get into what kind of organizational structure you have and who were the key people involved into the trial, what was the delegation of duty, qualification of those people. So these are all resource-based questions which they would be looking at. And even your archiving facilities, they are very keen to know if you have done a paper archiving, what kind of archiving facility you have. Is it fireproof, waterproof, termite proof, these kind of things. Even for soft E kind of archiving, they would like to see which are the servers where they are placed. Do you have backup servers? Example, you may have some servers in Bengaluru, but you have backup server somewhere else, and they would like to see that record also. So it can be as comprehensive as that. The next is, can someone read the titles only? Titles in the blue for me.
Administrative aspect of the trial master file, sponsor and investigator.
Thank you. Thanks. So you can see what were those approvals which were received, insurance copies, what are the contracts with the respective labs and all, and trial master file, TMF as we say, it has to have everything into it, right from the protocol to ICF, the CRF, everything, and they check that and whether there is any observation, critical or major into that. Again, would need someone's help for this.
Clinical conduct of the trial, management of the trial by the sponsor.
Yeah, thanks. So how the trial was conducted, you can see special row for confidentiality. Even the ICF process, the way screening was done, and when it comes to the management of the trial by either a sponsor or a CRO, then how the delegation of duties happened, how the investigators were selected, where the sites trained, and were there any serious breaches when the trial was being managed, how was the data monitored. So they would like to see all of this. Yeah, again, would need someone's help for this.
Safety reporting, investigational medicinal products or pharmacy.
Thank you. So very important how the AEs and SAEs were reported, where their expedited reporting cases, what kind of environment, temperature and all was maintained for investigational medicinal product, what was the accountability of that, what was the subject compliance, how it was calculated, and was there any emergency code breaking system. Specifically, as we all know, if some SAE happens and it's a double blind trial, the code breaking may have to be done because investigator need to know that patient was on what, on the comparator or a test drug, because the treatment may differ accordingly. But at the same time, the code breaking has to be in such a way that it should not give away the blind or the randomization totally. It should be only for that particular product. So how these procedures were followed or were these procedures in place, they also inspect that. Yeah, again, would need someone's help for this.
Clinical data management, service data review or verification, clinical trial monitoring.
Thanks. So the CDM, how was the CDM and where the subject diaries were there or were there e-diaries kind of thing? How the data was handled, how the data was reconciled, when was the database locked, what was the source data? Can someone tell me what do you mean by source data?
It's a first document where patients first or like details are mentioned.
Yeah, may I know who is that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. Correct. So it's the first document. It can be an outside patient department OPD case paper. It can be an indoor patient department case paper. It can be also a laboratory report. Can be also an ECG report. So whatever is the first data, as Shweta said, which was captured for the patient's clinical or laboratory attributes, and then that data was transferred into the CRF. So source data becomes very, very important. And the next piece is the clinical trial monitoring, that how the monitoring happened and what was the frequency, what were the procedures. Central monitoring activities. Can someone tell me what exactly is central monitoring? Any idea on that? Okay, so central monitoring, the name itself gives you a hint that you will be doing it from just one point, and this is largely applicable when we have electronic data management. So electronic CRFs, electronic even sometimes consent forms. So this will be monitored remotely or centrally, wherein the monitor will have a login credentials and can go and check the data. Of course, there would be privileges for monitor, which will be different from the administrator and which will be different from the owner of the process. So it is not that there would be breach of confidentiality of the patients and all. The privileges are streamlined, and the monitor will be only able to see what he or she is supposed to see without breaching the confidentiality of the patient data. And the EMA group can get into that granular detail also. Yeah, would need someone's help for this as well.
Instrument-based diagnostic examinations, clinical sample management.
Yeah. And even the laboratory certification. So what were the, laboratories which were used, how the samples were managed. Sometimes some sample may require transfer in cold storage, or sometimes some transfers may have an expiry of that particular sample within say 24 or 48 hours, and how it was maintained, and whether the laboratories which were utilized were accredited or certified, what accreditation certificates were available with them. All those things also will be inspected. Yeah, would need someone's help for this as well.
Bioanalysis laboratory, pharmacokinetics analysis, statistical analysis.
Thank you. So you can see different even labs, not only previously we saw biochemistry labs, but now even the PK lab, how the analysis was conducted, and very important, how was the statistical analysis conducted, right from the first step of sample size calculation to even how the statistical analysis plan, SAP, and tables, figures, listings, TFL, all these things were analyzed and drafted. Yeah, would need someone's help.
Reports, quality management system.
Thank you. So, what are the reports which have come across? Of course, very important is the clinical study report, CSR. You can see third bullet in that very distinctly mention of statement about GCP compliance. They want this by default. This is a mandatory statement which has to be there in any clinical study report you draft. And then the QMS, quality management system, which also has a component of SOPs and quality control, QC, quality assurance, and audits. Here you can see the EMA GCP inspection report. The broader headings which you will see over here is what were the approval dates and what kind of document versions were there as per different dates, let it be protocol or ICF. So very important here, they get to see the journey of the protocol and if required even ICFs, because as I said previously, the protocol, it is not necessary that it will be just version 1.0 which will be implemented. Protocol also may undergo revision, and different versions of protocol like 2.0, 3.0 would be available, but the GCP inspection EMA group would like to see when were these protocols revised, the dates and the documentation around that. So becomes very, very important from that angle. Now prime, can someone just read the bold part of what exactly is prime for me?
PRIME is a scheme launched by the European Medicines Agency to enhance support for the development of medicines that target an unmet medical need. This voluntary scheme is based on enhanced interaction and early dialogue with developers of promising medicines to optimize development plans and speed up evaluation so these medicines can reach patients earlier.
Thank you. So as I said, this is something which I referred right at the start of our presentation. This is something which they have done very recently, and you can see the objective very clearly: unmet medical need. So a disease for which there is no standard of care available, or disease for which the current standard of care is not that good, and diseases wherein you require new medicines. So many oncology conditions wherein unfortunately when the patients reach into the metastatic stage, or there is a failure of the first line of treatment and even sometimes second line of treatment, these becomes areas of unmet medical needs wherein European Medicine Agency is now encouraging developers to come ahead and discuss with them, and they will support expediting sorry, the evaluation of these medicines, so as the drug development cycle will be of lesser duration as against what it is for the regular conventional drugs. So you can see even in the accelerated assessment, they give scientific advice. So anyone who is looking for developing a drug for an area of unmet medical need can approach under PRIME the EMA working group and ask for scientific advice, and the EMA working group will give it to them, because they believe that they would be happy to join hands for drug development right from the word go, so that people who are suffering from rare diseases or people who do not have many options available for different clinical conditions can get any of these options early as against what will happen in the regular framework. These are some of the national regulatory authorities. Can someone read the name of the country and the name of the agency? The left two columns for me. Hello.
Finland, Finnish Medicine Agency.
Mhm.
France, National Agency for the Safety of Medicine and Health Products. Germany, Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices. Germany, Paul Ehrlich Institute. Greece, National Organization for Medicines.
Thank you. So you can see different countries because, as I said, European Medicine Agency, for that matter, European Union, is a group of countries in the Europe coming together. And again, not all the countries in Europe, 27 countries in Europe coming together and having a regulatory framework for many commercial activities. Of course, EMA is focusing on the medicine part of it, but these countries on their own have their own national regulatory authorities, which give the approvals for respective marketing authorizations at the country level. The European Commission gives marketing authorization at the European level. Of course, when I say European, it is European Union level. And that's why you will see the names like BfArM. When I say BfArM, it's a Germany institute, Federal Institute, BFARM, or ANSM. These are the names which are commonly used by people working in the regulatory vertical, and they refer to these countries by their abbreviations like BfArM or ANSM, and by that we have to guess the names. Like BfArM is for Germany, ANSM is for France. So just wanted to tell you all that these are those national regulatory authorities which take care of the approvals at their respective country level, and you just need to be aware of them. Now, this is something which I just found out in their vision document for 2025. For human medicine, they have taken 5 goals which they would like to target by 2025. So see, they are not just those regulatory, I would say administrative people who are happy in just going to
So voice is breaking.
and have one. Sorry, is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. So they have their own goals for strategy. So can someone read these goals for me?
Catalyzing the
हाँ बोल बोल.
हाँ बोलो, पहले आप करके गाड़ी छोड़ जाएगी है ना. तो विनीत बोल.
catalyzing the integration of science and technology in medicines development, driving collaborative evidence generation, that is improving the scientific quality of evaluations, advancing patient-centered access to medicines in partnership with healthcare systems, enabling and leveraging research and innovation in regulatory science, addressing emerging health threats and availability and therapeutic challenges.
Thank you. So I hope all of you are getting what exactly they are targeting. And this is the good thing because they just don't want to restrict themselves to clerical things or administrative things. They really want to advance the science, and you will see, let it be catalyzing the integration of science and technology. Technology, as we know, changing the world. I mean, this particular session itself is an example of that. All of us are in the comfort slash discomforts of our home and still are connected and discussing. Uh, they are looking at collaboration in terms of the evidence generation and would like to see that how the quality can be improved. uh, Patient-centered access to medicine. This is what they focus on, because we all know ultimately when at the national level the decisions are taken, sometimes these decisions are based on the resources which a particular country or group of countries have. So this becomes very important, that can they go beyond that, and can they have the partnership with various healthcare systems and improve the access to medicine. This is something, the fourth one becomes, I think, very, very contemporary, addressing emerging health threats and availability or therapeutic challenges. I think all of us are experiencing this in COVID-19 era, emerging health threats. And despite we having SARS and Ebola in the past, COVID-19 is reshaping what exactly is pandemic all about. And this is where, that's why you must have seen, let it be US FDA or EMEA, they have COVID on their websites as the first thing in today's date. Clearly talks about that they are on the toes and they want to stay ahead of the curve, specifically when they are encouraging the all these health situations. I'm sure, are you aware how many vaccines are currently in development for COVID? Any idea? Hello. Any number comes to your mind in number of vaccine candidates? Okay, so there are around 70 to 100 different vaccine candidates in different stages of development, as we know. In fact, some have moved into the human phase. You would have seen studies started in Germany, studies started in UK, studies started in US on healthy volunteers first. I mean, all of this is being driven by these regulatory authorities. The earlier they will approve the methodology, and after that, of course, the results, the earlier we are going to get different options. Let it be vaccines or let it be medicines which are there. So that's why it becomes very, very important that these regulatory authorities are on top of their game by adapting to the changing environment and also understanding the urgency behind it. For that matter, even at the India level, the Indian Regulatory Authority also has encouraged the innovators to come ahead and submit their proposals for evaluation. But this is where I just wanted to spend some time on this fourth goal, that how relevant it is in today's era. And then, of course, the fifth one, which is more of enabling and leveraging research and innovation in regulatory science. So clearly we can see they just don't want to be a watchdog. They want to go beyond, and they are more keen for they to come across as a friendly regulatory agency. Whenever you visit their website, you will in fact see they giving a lot of infographics, and they also giving a lot of information in lay language. And that is why I rate this agency as the best regulatory agency in terms of being user friendly, people friendly, and even their guidelines are more specific. And that is why EMA stands out in terms of that. They are the leaders when it comes to even biosimilars. But today I'm not going to waste much time on that. But they in fact go to the level of molecule So unlike US FDA, which gave the guideline for biosimilars in general, European Medicine Agency, CHMP, has given guidelines for biosimilar at a product level. So you actually can develop a particular product's biosimilar for European region basis that particular document. I mean, they can be as specific and as objective as possible, and that is why it's a different agency. So thank you all for that. We can have now some Q&A. If you guys want to know more about any particular thing. Okay, I think silence is golden. So thank you all. Thank you for your participation and active participation. I know I keep calling out your names primarily for you to help me for reading these and all. That's largely to encourage participation and to keep all of you focused and glued to the presentation. But it's a very different environment to do it digitally. So just wanted to keep it that way. Thank you so much and have a nice and safe weekend. And I think in today's era, I may just say turn green as soon as possible. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.